So the deck that we're going to be using today is the Moonology Manifestation Oracle deck. We've actually used it. This is our third week in a row of using it, which this is the first time this has ever happened. I intuitively pick which card deck is meant for the day, and I didn't realize until last week that I had 3 weeks in a row with the same deck. When I first started using it, I only tossed it in like once a month. So now to have it basically be the inverse is kind of interesting. But I'm 99% sure next week is my original moon deck that I was using at the beginning. But I think it's interesting because we're talking about astrology and there are some astrological themes and some imagery within this deck. So as we get to the point of flipping the cards over, I will show them to the screen multiple times. If you ever want me to show the cards again, I'm happy to do so. Yeah, and please do engage in the chat. Send, the little hearts in the corner. All of that feedback just lets me know, like, you're with me, you're resonating, and it's making sense to you. So it's good affirmation back for me that I'm not just talking to the void. I'm just going to show the backs of the cards real quick. So for context, I don't look at the cards until I actually flip them over in the reading. So this is the first card, which is the one that we're going to be starting with. And I usually give people an opportunity, if you want to tune in, to predict for yourself which reading will resonate more, or if it'll be a combination of the both, then you can do that now. So this is the second card. I'll show them quickly just a couple more times, but what you're looking for, because obviously I'm showing you the backs of the cards, so the card is the same, but the front of the card is different. So you're just tuning in for yourself. Is there any sort of physiological reaction, knowing anything that's happening for you internally that's indicating which card might resonate more? So this is the first card, which we'll be starting with. And then our second card. And you can just throw a 1 or a 2 or both in the chat. So this will be the last time. So this is the first card. And the second card. Relative split here. We have some 2s and we have some 1s, slightly skewing toward 2, which has been the trend, interestingly enough, for probably the better part of a month now. So many people trending towards number 2. All right, so I'm going to take just a wee moment and then we'll dive in with the first reading. I'm getting something about like a fire alarm, like 5-alarm fire or something. I know that's like an expression. This is a collective card. Both of these readings for the week ahead are collective readings. Yes, like I'm just seeing like the flashing lights. I'm not seeing the actual fire. I'm just seeing the alarm system to the fire, like the alarm system being triggered and all of the activity, the sound, the running around and gathering things. So what I'm getting is it's about being protected. It's about being prepared. So you have your kit available. You have an idea of what it is that you would grab. For anybody, I just always think of this, for anyone that's seen the rom-com Leap Year, there is a motif that comes up a few times in that film where it's kind of this idea of what's actually important to you. So they discuss, well, if your house was on fire, what would you grab? What's really the most important? And then that comes up later on, and then you're kind of the characters are being tested to say, okay, well, what is the most important thing to me? Or is it the people or the items, or, is it the stuff, or is it something else? And it feels very much in that vein of really understanding what's important you want to grab. And again, this doesn't mean necessarily for anybody that you're at risk of anything like this happening. This feels more like it's about this idea of preparedness and about knowing your most fundamental values? What are the things, those sentimental possessions that you have, the small list of those, the people, the relationships, your understanding of yourself, really, really knowing that. And actually, I'm realizing now as I'm saying this does make a lot of sense with some of the Venus retrograde, because Venus can be tied to values and tied to relationships. And when you're in a retrograde, you're revisiting. So you're doing a review. So this feels actually very timely. I know we just kicked that off on Saturday. So it seems like we're picking up on a little bit of that energy. I know we're into a new week now, but it feels like we're starting from there. We're talking about the next 6 to 7 days, and this is the next 5 to 6 days. So really a big chunk of the week where you are doing this assessment, doing these evaluations, reflections, and then really taking a look around. So what can you actually get rid of? What are things that you don't need anymore? What are things that are taking up space, that are in conflict with your values? It also could be relationships as well. So things, people that are out of alignment with your values. And then, okay, so it just seems to me like in doing this revisionary work, that is also the act of preparing. Because I was like, I don't understand when these are connecting, but it's that when you do that, when you're really coming back to what your values are and you're taking small actions there, it sets you up for being able to accept in and call in what is aligned with what's most important to you. Card here, very, very interesting. Last quarter moon and Aries, work through your feelings. So very fascinating about this card. One, we were talking about the Venus retrograde. Venus is currently in Aries right now. And when we have a last quarter, last quarters are after the full moon. So the light is starting to go away and we're starting to head back to the beginning of the moon cycle, which is new moons. So we are doing some assessment whenever we have these quarters, the first quarter and the last quarter. You're checking, you're saying, okay, what's going on? What do I need to revisit? What do I need to adjust? So it's interesting that we also have that reflected in the moon phase on the card as well. And I do think it's funny, the piece about your feelings, because Venus doesn't really love to be in Aries. Venus is very people-oriented, emotional, connected, beauty, peace-oriented. And Aries is very independent, can be some conflict, competition, tension. So what we're sorting through this week is what's important, what our values are. And then I think this layer of, oh, well, you're also going to be checking in on your feelings throughout this entire process as well. So how are you feeling about this when you have to sit and you're assessing what's important, when you're taking inventory of your life? Really pay attention to what comes up and also work through that as well, because nothing that we do is ever fully detached from emotions. And yes, we can compartmentalize and we can text some things away, but is that always the best thing to do? Not necessarily. Last quarter moon in Aries, work through your feelings. Stephanie, I didn't want to interpret when I heard and saw fire trucks, lights and sirens when you flashed card 2. Oh, cool. As soon as you started reading number 1, said alarm and then fire alarm, I was like, whoa, I've also been thinking a lot about emergency kits in the last week. Not prepared for anything. Just feel like I really should be. Yeah, Stephanie, everybody's intuitive. So you're picking up on something here. I have no idea what's going to come through for card number 2, but yeah, that's awesome. So because these cards are for the collective, as I mentioned, this card to me read as the next 5 to 6 days. So you may be someone who this is option 1 for the week. Sometimes the readings are structured such that you could be on card number 1 and then you move into card 2. To me, this feels like it's separate. So maybe you're either just doing card number 1, you're just doing card number 2, or you are doing both at the same time. There's no like moving from 1 into 2. They feel very distinct for me this week. Last quarter moon in Aries, work through your feelings. Collective reading for the next 6 to 7 days. What do we need to know? It's interesting. There's also a sense to prepare this for this one too. So the first thing I was seeing is somebody zipping up like a really poofy jacket, like an outdoor jacket, like a winter coat, not a pea coat or anything like that. It's a poofy down almost material coat. So it's being like zipped up. So I want to see like what. So this isn't about protection. So it's not about protection from the elements. I do keep getting something about being cozy. So it seems like the warmth, the comfort piece is what's actually coming through here. So it's about being in comfort, getting comfortable. This idea of sometimes being comfortable with what's uncomfortable, but it doesn't actually feel like that's like the energy here. Like that's an idea that people come up with. Like sometimes it's just nice to be comfortable. Sometimes it's nice to feel safe and protected and held. And that seems much more in line with this energy, which I think is a pretty stark contrast to what we're talking about for the first card, where it's like fire alarms. Like there's a lot of stuff going on and you're having to assess. And this is like, not how can I be in my bubble, but how can I be, yeah, it feels like it's the how can I be held? How can I be supported? Less in the assessment piece. So for the first card, we were talking about evaluating. We're talking about evaluating what's going on around us and who we're interacting with and how that's going and how that makes us feel. And this is just focusing on the feeling part. So where are we at? I just keep getting, but it's not about assessing because I want to say like, oh, where are we at with our life? Are we feeling comfortable in our life? Are there things we want to change? But it's not about assessing. It's just about being. It's like just trying to live in the present of being comfortable, finding that comfort, seeking that comfort. Collective reading, and this is not an escapist thing I'm getting as well. So it's about our sensations. We're not going into escapism. And that's when you are fully detaching, you are fully disconnecting, you're burrowing away, and you're like, well, I don't want to deal with stuff. I'm just going to be comfortable in my bubble. It's not about being in a bubble. It's about being very present, but connecting to your comforts, the things that make you feel at home. So it could be with people. It doesn't have to be by yourself. Maybe the thing that makes you feel comfortable and supported and safe is spending time with family or friends. And so that's the thing that you're doing. It doesn't have to mean that you're by yourself. Like, you know the things that you like. You know the things that make you feel safe, that make you feel warm and feel cozy and at ease. So just like engaging with some of those things this week and really being present in that. And again, not escaping, not doing that because you're trying to get away from anything, but just embracing that. I realize I haven't even flipped over the second card. Let's see what the card is. Y'all, can't make this stuff up. Can't make it up. This is perfect. Okay, so our card is first quarter moon in Pisces. Honor your feelings. So one, we started off this talk discussing these retrogrades, which are in Aries, starting in Aries, going into Pisces. These are the cards we picked. They're both so they're the last quarter and the first quarter, which I was talking about earlier. They're both these assessment, if you will, but check-in phases. So when you have the new moon, you're setting your goal, you're setting your manifestation. And then when you get to the first quarter, you're like, all right, well, how have I been doing? And in this case, because it's in Pisces, it's how am I feeling? How am I feeling about this? And you're honoring, I just love the fact that both of them just happen to be cards about feelings. So for our first reading, we were talking about, you know what, you're doing the assessment and things are going to come up. Make sure to face them, make sure to work through those too. And this is, you're in your sensations, you're in your body, you're in your feelings. And so when you're honoring, it feels to me like honoring your feelings. Oh, well, honoring the things that are making you comfortable, honoring the things that are making you feel good, feel safe. And of course, through all of that, there's a certain emotional response. When you feel comfortable, when you feel safe, when you feel held, you could have a different emotional response, very different emotional response than to in the first reading. So the polarity here that we have, which I think is so fascinating, is, I'm just realizing this as well. Aries is a fire sign. So when I was talking about like a fire alarm going off, so we have that. So it's much more on alert, active. Aries is very active. And hilariously, I kept emphasizing, oh, it's not about escaping. Pisces is associated with escapism. This is the low vibrational energy of Pisces is escapism. That is not what we're doing. We're tuning in, we're focusing our energy, and it's something that Pisces can struggle with a little bit because Pisces can feel it all, can sense it all. And then there can be a little bit of overwhelm with that, and then Pisces wants to check out. So we are heavily resisting that this week, and instead just like, how can we ground, which Pisces always needs grounding, how can we ground into these feelings of comfort, support, and safety? I love this. How perfect was that? So it seems like we're in a very emotional week. So you're assessing what's going on with my emotions in the first one. And for the second one, you're like, how can I lean into my emotions and foster safety, feelings of safety for myself so that I'm not overwhelmed? And with this first one, it's like, there's a lot of things that are happening that could make you feel overwhelmed, but you're saying, what can I trim? What isn't serving me anymore? So I'm going to show them another time. First card was last quarter moon in Aries, work through your feelings. And this was our fire alarms are going off. You're looking around and you're saying, what do I grab? What's the most important thing? You're assessing your values. So on the larger scale, your values, your items, your assets, your people in your life, your relationships, what is most important to you? This is an assessing period. And then if you're feeling any sort of discomfort with what you're deciding to get rid of, what you're deciding to seek instead, then really considering what your feelings are and not shying away from them. And then our second reading for the week ahead, first quarter moon in Pisces, honor your feelings. And this was zipping up our super cozy, puffy jacket, and we're being present. We're in our coziness. We're in our comforts. We're seeking our comforts. The things that we already know make us feel comfortable, safe, and secure. It could be things, it could be locations, it could be people. And the emphasis here was not to isolate, not to lean on these for tools of escapism, as is prone for people that are Piscean. How can we get in touch with our feelings? How can we get in touch with our physical feelings, sensations? So not just the emotions, our sensations. How can we use those to ground us into the feelings of comfort and safety? Let me know in the chat, regardless of what you may or may not have predicted for yourself, how do you feel about these two cards? So you may be someone, as I mentioned, who's just in that first reading, just in the second reading, or you may have both of them operating simultaneously for you. Deborah, lots of end of a cycle energy too. Oh, and Deborah. Perfect. as well, because we also have in March, which I will be talking about in a future class. It's already on the schedule. And we actually talked about my podcast. We have our season two. Season two just started on Saturday. So also, if you're interested in that, that's also in the link in my bio. I know people have asked about my podcast before. So we have eclipses this month. So we have on the 14th and on the 29th, we have eclipses, and eclipses are all about beginnings and endings. And in fact, we have our first Virgo eclipse in this series and our last Aries eclipse in this series. So we have a double layer of beginnings and endings because we're transitioning into a new cycle. So there's a lot of that going around, 100%. If you don't follow me, and if you'd like to follow me now, then feel free to do so. If you would like to support my work by donating, you can click the button to donate. You can also go to the link in my bio and donate through PayPal or Venmo, or you can work with me directly by booking a reading. That's either a psychic reading with or without cards, or an astrology reading. I know we veered into some astrology today. And if you are interested in learning more about the March astrology, that is Wednesday's class. I believe it's same time. I think it's also 12 or 11:30 Eastern time. And yeah, and then I'll be back next Monday for another round of readings for the week ahead. So thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day and your week. And yeah, if you have any questions about the current astro weather, we are in a retrograde. Again, you can check that out in the link in my bio. You can go to my blog and I have a whole write-up about it. Thanks, Stephanie. And I love seeing familiar faces and people coming back. It's very nice. And I love seeing new people too.